Commissioner Sheeler to please lead us in our salute of the flag. Next, we're on item number 2. I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner Flowers is not present. Commissioner Kinderwater. Present. Commissioner Rowie.
Present.
Commissioner Usick is absent. Commissioner Van Duker.
Here.
Vice Chair Sheeler.
Here.
Chair Shishko.
Here.
Thank you.
And we are moving on to item number 3. Now it's time for the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent, which is the minutes from February 25th, 2025. Does anyone from the commission or the public wish to pull the consent item for discussion? If not, do I have a motion to and a second to approve the calendar, to the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Van Duker. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, and a second by Commissioner Al-Rawi.
Take roll.
Okay, let's do a roll call on this one.
Commissioner Van Duker.
Aye.
Commissioner Shishko.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Chair Shishko. Vice Chair Sheeler.
Aye.
Commissioner Kinderwater.
Aye.
Commissioner Rawoui. Al-Rawoui, go ahead.
Aye.
Thank you. And then we have Usick and Flowers absent. Motion passed. Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to item number 4. Clarification for item number 4. You want me to read that whole paragraph, right? Okay, so under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the audience may address the commission on any item within jurisdiction of the commission or any agenda item. Those wishing to speak on non-agenda items will be called upon at the beginning of the meeting. Those wishing to speak for or against an agenda item will be called upon after the presentation by the City Planning Division and the applicant for that agenda item.
We have no speaker cards.
No
here.
speakers, okay. So I need to open it up and close it, right? Okay, so open, no speaker cards. Guess we'll close that. And item number 5, we'll move to our regular calendar item this evening, which is to receive a presentation on economic development work plan. So we'll first hear a presentation by staff, followed by commissioner questions, and then we'll open it to for public comment. And can we proceed with the staff's presentation?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick introduction. Director Megan Huber is our economic development and community engagement director. One of her major tasks is economic development, obviously by the title. Over the last several months, she worked really hard to develop an economic development work plan for the next several years to guide the city on how we invest in economic development based on best practices, based on research, and based on what a tailored approach would be for citrus sites, not just anywhere else. So kudos to Megan as she gives you this presentation. Feel free to ask her questions at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kempenaar. Hello, Planning Commission. As Casey shared, I'm Megan Huber, Economic Development and Community Engagement Director. Really excited to share this plethora of information with you this evening as we are already bringing the first steps of this economic development work plan back to you in the next item. Casey asked to ask questions at the end, but I want to modify that. This is a pretty chewy, meaty work plan with a lot of categories, so I'm happy to take questions in real time as they relate to the subject matter. Cool? Okay, great. So digging in here, this work plan is a result of really intensive strategic planning by City Council and City staff. It relates to our overarching 3-year strategic goal to diversify for a vibrant economy. And last strategic planning cycle, City Council set a strategic objective for staff to prepare and present an economic development work plan to City Council, as well as establish a suite of incentives to attract sit-down dining and entertainment options. So we got to the work, and as you can imagine, putting together a work plan like this requires a lot of sweat equity. It involved a really extensive data gathering and analysis, a comprehensive real estate assessment, stakeholder outreach, and finally the development of the actual work plan itself. So digging in a little bit to data analysis, I'm going to give my colleague, Director Kempenaar, full permission. We had talked about maybe a 20-minute presentation, and I love geeking out on economic development information. So I also want to give him full permission to flag me for time should we need it. Okay, cool. So digging into the data analysis that informed this plan, these are what Citrus Heights looks like from a numbers perspective. We all have our own individual experience as a Citrus Heights resident or employee. Citrus Heights also exists quantitatively, and it's very important to be objective as we design a work plan to make sure we're rooting ourselves in data, how we relate as a city in and of itself, how we relate to the Sacramento region, how we relate to the state, and also nationally. So taking a look at the baseline of what Citrus Heights looks like from a data perspective, these are some highlights. We have about 87,000 residents, a labor force of about 45,000. Now I want to clarify here, these are residents who work. The jobs created inside of Citrus Heights boundaries are about 19,000. We have a $75,000 median household income, about a $407,000 median home value, and 22% of residents aged 25 to 64 hold a bachelor's degree or higher. These are all very important demographics as we go to make really important economic development moves. Labor force relates to workforce development, relates to workforce attraction, relates to industry building and beyond. So this is our foundation that is what we build on. So top industry clusters in Citrus Heights, again, the reason why it's so important to root ourselves in data is because anecdotally, if you were to ask me as a Citrus Heights resident what Citrus Heights' top industry cluster is before I approached Citrus Heights as an economic developer, I would have automatically said retail. Because that's the majority of our commercial real estate, and that's what we see driving around the city every day. It is not, however, our top industry cluster. By employment count volume, our top employment cluster is healthcare and social assistance. Second is retail trade. Third is accommodation and food services. I think we're all very aware that Citrus Heights does not yet have a hotel, which means we're holding down that category in all food service and restaurants. Fourth is professional, scientific, and technical services. And fifth is administrative and support services. Now, as we're building an economic development work plan, knowing our top industry clusters are great. Those are our strengths. What are our opportunities? We did data analysis supported by Greater Sacramento Economic Council and their data shop, and identified our 5 top target industry clusters, highest growth potential clusters over the next 5 years. And that's what this looks like. First, holding it down is healthcare and social assistance. That is with an aging population, especially an aging in place population. More comprehensive, local, and accessible medical services become even more important. Second is consumer services. That includes arts, entertainment, and recreation. This is also important as we look to a staff recommendation inside of the work plan for a reapproval of our business attraction incentive program that was designed specifically to attract entertainment concepts. The reason we built that program around that is because that is one of our top community requests. It's also great to see that that is a top growth potential industry cluster as well. Third is retail, filling up all of that retail commercial real estate that we have with resilient and experiential consumer concepts. Fourth is financial and professional services that can boost those median household incomes higher. And finally, fifth is entrepreneurship and startup opportunities. Yes?
Could you go back just a slide?
Mm-hmm.
For the arts, growth, when you say growth potential, are you speaking of number of art-type businesses, or are you speaking economic impact?
That's a great question. So data analysis happened through a combination of qualitative analysis as well as quantitative analysis. So this is not only about like leakage, stuff that's going to other markets like Roseville, Folsom, Elk Grove that we could capture in Citrus Heights. It also speaks to what's called an LQ. That's a location quotient, which is an economic development metric that takes all of those qualitative considerations into account in terms of real estate, growth potential, population projection, and market potential in general.
So we wouldn't necessarily, even though it may be a growth opportunity, arts and entertainment may not necessarily represent as large of a economic impact, but certainly it benefits the community in terms of just amenities.
Yes, absolutely, Commissioner Sheeler. That is a great point. This segment isn't necessarily the highest sales tax generating segment, right? It could boost property tax in such a way where really substantial TIs can uplift a property to a quality assessment and similar. Where we really see economic impact for consumer services et al. Is the foot traffic and the creation of destination locations that drive that exponential economic impact to surrounding businesses as well, right? Like if you come to the movies, you're gonna go to dinner. Maybe you're gonna run an errand to Target after. So creating that foot traffic, bringing new, not only serving residents, but bringing new visitors as well. So in terms of real estate assessment, there are essentially 3 types of real estate available anywhere. We have retail, office, and commercial, and industrial. There's specialty stuff like maybe daycares or medical offices, a veterinary clinic, but really those are the 3 core real estate segments that can be used to attract new business. So I'm gonna share some quick facts about what that looks like in Citrus Heights because we wanna make sure we're building a plan that we can use and that doesn't sit on the shelf. So for retail real estate, Citrus Heights has 6 million square feet of retail commercial space. And right now it has a 12% vacancy rate. The snapshot on the left where you see the pin drops, that's from a software called CoStar. That's a commercial real estate database. So that is a real-time snapshot of current available retail real estate in Citrus Heights. I want to note here that that's actually not a lot considering the level of commercial real estate that we have. There are limited vacancies in retail space in which to effectively business attract. One example are for those entertainment concepts that we're talking about, Commissioner Sheeler. Usually something like a movie theater or a bowling alley or a Dave & Buster's or similar is looking for a sweet spot of 20 to 40,000 square feet. In Citrus Heights, we have 3 vacant spaces that would fill that requirement outside of the Sunrise Mall. So retail is limited for effective business attraction is the takeaway here. Moving on, this shows a little bit about what retail recruitment looks like. The area on the left identifies 5, 10, and 15-minute drive time radiuses. And that's how we measure demographics, population to effectively speak to retail demand in a particular location, the outputs of which are on the right snapshot. Some other qualifications as it relates to effectively attracting retail are what those trade area requirements look like. Cannibalization, if a retail concept is coming too close to another location, they could eat from their own market share. Always a concern. Co-tenancy is important. We talked about how if folks are coming to an entertainment concept, they'll want to go to dinner after. So retail concepts are going to want to look for a place where that synergy is either already there or can easily be created. A gap analysis is where we look at what is not in a market right now, where there is substantive market share to show a retail concept that there's a market to capture. Site selection is also important, finding the right spot. Again, with a limited supply, we have to work really hard to find the right real estate for the right concept. Hopefully leveraging company expansion strategies, and then always offering the right incentives and support to be able to make that happen. Moving on to office real estate, this is a snapshot of current available office real estate in Citrus Heights, even slimmer options. Citrus Heights has about a 14% vacancy rate right now in the market compared to a regional vacancy rate of 18%. So takeaway here is Citrus Heights is holding it down in the office category. The majority of that is small business. There's a really great stat that 60% of all Citrus Heights businesses have less than 10 employees. So a lot of these are smaller office spaces. When folks are looking at potential offices to land in, really important factors include workforce availability and labor market fit. When we looked at Citrus Heights from a data perspective, we talked about educational level, we talked about population level. Those are the data points that make up workforce qualifications to effectively speak to available labor market. Trade area and market demand, similar to retail, is always important. Office space condition and classifications really set locations apart as well. Office has Class A, Class B, Class C. The supermajority of Citrus Heights inventory, I would say, is Class B and Class C. Class A is really what you find maybe downtown or new construction, Roseville, Folsom, core industry cluster. So those classes are in demand just based on various industries. Hybrid work and office space demand are, of course, very relevant in our post-COVID requirement. Co-tenancy and industry clustering is also important. Certainly it's important in retail, but just as important in office. Like when we consider what a local medical ecosystem looks like, right? Look down Dewey Drive. Dewey Drive didn't happen overnight. Dewey Drive happened because that had a primary driver of Mercy San Juan Hospital, and then medical offices and services started clustering. So clustering is just as important of a trend in office as it is in retail. And local incentives and business support are still really important. It's not so much about sales tax generation or property tax increase. When we talk about office, it's really about that daytime workforce population that can, again, create that foot traffic for your local economy. Finally, our third category is industrial style real estate, and look at that lack of pinpoints. Citrus Heights has 11 properties total that we classify as quasi-industrial. I'm sure Director Kempenaar would want me to chime in here that we don't technically have anything industrially zoned, but when we think about businesses that need large warehouse spaces, storage, et cetera, these are the types of real estate that we're looking at. The fact that we lack this style of real estate creates a very limited ability to participate in the Sacramento region's regional business attraction. In the Sacramento region, primary industry clusters, unlike the ones that we reviewed for Citrus Heights, are things like mobility, advanced manufacturing, agriculture, ag tech. Those all need very large floor plate, wide open, expansive spaces for more industrial operations that Citrus Heights just can't participate in, which is why it's even more important for us to create a highly localized and customized economic development work plan that works for us specifically. Any questions so far? Fascinating? Interesting? We're all economic developers chomping at the bit for business attraction? Cool. So diving into stakeholder outreach that informed this economic development work plan, that really happened in three categories: our developer and business community, our city council leadership, and our public at large via the flash vote. So I want to take a moment here and make sure I connect the dots that what I'm about to talk about relates directly to the next agenda item, because one of the action items inside of the economic development work plan is to lower our regulatory environment barriers to entry to ensure more effective business attraction. So the market intelligence that we gleaned from our developer and business community directly informed the recommendations that you'll be reviewing. And this is a snapshot of what those sounded like. Some insights that we gleaned from these interviews is that our aging and evolving retail landscape is a challenge. Unlike other cities and jurisdictions who have the benefit, nay, the luxury of new construction, Citrus Heights has to specialize and be very, very good at redevelopment. Redevelopment is more expensive, it's harder work, and it happens less, which means we need to be even more aggressive with how we recruit via our lack of regulation in that space, essentially. We did hear that kudos for very responsive city staff. So we know that as projects are coming in, we're catching them effectively and stewarding them through the system. There are new emerging uses in this space. We talked about some more experiential entertainment concepts, and similar. On the flip side of that coin is a burgeoning demand for drive-throughs and auto-intensive uses across the board. So diving deeper into some of the challenges, a lot of smaller businesses have a lack of familiarity with permitting, which requires a lot of hand-holding and ombudsmanship through regulatory processes. We did see opportunity to lower zoning thresholds to ensure more effective business attraction. We also saw the opportunity for a recommendation to flat rate fees to provide certainty to developers and businesses. And finally, like you saw in the industrial real estate snapshot, we heard about the very limited light industrial opportunities. So like I said, recommendations as it relates to all of this really great market intelligence will be reviewed in the next agenda item, and we're really excited to advance these next steps as part of the Economic Development Work Plan. In terms of resident feedback, what we heard is that our residents want more shopping and dining options. On average, they're satisfied. We rated about a 3 out of 5 average. And interestingly, residents 35 and under are satisfied at a higher percentage than other age ranges. I can't provide conclusive takeaways on that, but I'd be interested in speculation if anyone has any. When we asked what, if anything, prevents you from shopping or dining more in Citrus Heights, we heard not enough higher-end stores and restaurants, and shopping centers and storefronts need renovations. In terms of what's in most demand, businesses or services that residents think we need most in Citrus Heights, we heard restaurants and cafes, and entertainment and recreational options. So great news again, we know that at least one of those is a top industry cluster, which means we have existing synergy. And we also created our business attraction incentive program, especially to attract those types of businesses. Finally, when we interviewed council on how to create an effective economic development work plan around tangible and measurable results, we heard feedback like proactively attract and retain desired businesses using incentives, create vibrancy with a balanced mix of small business and destination concepts, maximize business-friendly policies, so doubling down on that next agenda item, we are maximizing business-friendly policies. We heard a desire for new and exciting marketing, commercial corridor revitalization, infrastructure investment, and more. It's a big job, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And with that, we crafted the Economic Development Work Plan. It's a 3-year plan with 5 categories: business attraction and development services, business retention and expansion, small business support and innovation, marketing and placemaking, and finally, and just as important, organizational culture. So business attraction and development services had implementation steps and metrics towards goals in 6 areas. First, to streamline zoning and permitting processes to support business and retail recruitment, as you'll see in the next agenda item. This will set the foundation for a refreshed and targeted retail recruitment strategy. In our toolbox for effective business attraction is our Business Attraction Incentive Program to attract new restaurants, breweries, and entertainment. Also in that toolbox is our Small Business Design Support Program, specifically created for those small businesses unfamiliar with regulatory processes and unconnected with the development community. Because one of the pieces of feedback that Director Kemp and I heard from our outreach and what we've experienced ourselves helping folks through the system is that all businesses want to do is start and run their business. And they sign a lease thinking it's a turnkey opportunity, and then they get in there and discover that they needed to make some changes. And then they discover that the changes require a lot of paperwork and also some money. and they don't know who to call to create a site plan and a floor plan that they need to submit to building and fire before they do the remainder of the processes. So what the Small Business Design Support Program does is allows us to create a bench of preferred designers and cover up to $2,000 for this design, creation, and execution to get this business halfway down the field to submission, not spin their wheels, not waste time or money, and get automatically more familiar and hopefully doors open faster. We're also expanding our toolbox through effective partnerships with partners like Sacramento Area Sewer District, Sacramento Metro Fire, Sacramento County Health Department, and more, and offering enhanced development services support. This is done through a reclassification of a role in my department. To manage expectations here, my department is 3 people total, okay? So myself, a communications officer, and this role. This role was dedicated to community engagement, which is why you saw a lot of programs start up the last 3 years or so for community connection and community engagement and similar. Now that those are started up and running and available, this role is being classified and dedicated 100% to economic development. So all of the work that I'm talking about right now will be done by a full-time person and me. But also very important, and I'm going to lead with the close here. Usually I'll cover it in the organizational culture slide, but I've gathered so much momentum already that I'm just going to drop it on you. I hope you're okay with that. Even though there are 2 full-time positions in all of City Hall working on this very chewy economic development work plan, the truth of the matter is we have a full-time workforce working on it because everyone is an economic developer. It is all of our responsibility across all internal city departments, across all contract agencies, across all leadership boards and councils, across all of our community. We're all ambassadors for economic development. So maybe after the Planning Commission meeting, everyone can share what their favorite part of this work plan is, and I can put your name next to some of the action items. How does that sound? Okay, I'll see you later. So the second category is business retention and expansion. Just as important as business attraction, it's really important to keep all of the businesses that we have here happy and hopefully expanding. So the recommendations inside of this category include a structured business retention program with consistent outreach and follow-up, strengthening our partnerships even more, enhancing public safety resources, providing PR value by using city communications channels for businesses, and creating stronger workforce development connectivity. The third category is small business support and innovation. That's creating and increasing accessibility to technical assistance for small businesses. That is wrapping our arms around an identifiable startup ecosystem. I shared that small business statistic with you earlier. 60% of all Citrus Heights businesses have less than 10 employees. But identifying the root of our entrepreneurial ecosystem, how folks find information and support to start small businesses, is pretty tricky in Citrus Heights right now. So we've set a big, hairy goal to find out more, to bring it out and get it louder, and hopefully co-brand it as part of city economic development initiatives. And then finally, some recommendations on how to use community events for entrepreneurship is inside of the plan as well. The fourth category, marketing and placemaking, has action steps and metrics around increased economic development communications impact, how to facilitate and execute on consistent stakeholder communications, speaking more about what that looks like when we look at who is our economic development ecosystem, who are all of the partners involved in effective business attraction, what does good partnership and stakeholdership look like? It's across the board. I mean, we talked about how everyone is an economic developer. Past that, economic development ecosystems include developers, property owners, property managers, brokers, chambers of commerce, property business improvement districts. The list goes on and on. So it's a tough job to ensure consistent and quality communication, but we've identified some implementation steps and metrics on how we're gonna do that as well. We'll also influence commercial corridor beautification and some really fun stuff in grassroots marketing and placemaking. So fifth and final category, which I already covered, is our organizational culture. Like I said, everyone is an economic developer, and it takes all of us, gears in the machine, turning and churning for effective business attraction, retention, care, and growth of the local economy. And I'm really happy to report that we have a fantastic team supporting this work. I'm so grateful for the passion, the care, the customer service that all of our departments and ambassadors provide every single day, and they take that credo to heart, that everyone is an economic developer. So this was the recommendation to City Council at the end of this presentation in February to adopt the plan, reinstate our business attraction incentive program, approve the small business design support program, and bring the next agenda items recommendations before you this evening. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Very compelling presentation. I appreciate that. I have a question. I know you've already talked about this, but you know, when the next Starbucks comes in and we hear those comments like, oh, we don't need that in this city, or you know, things like that.
Sure.
It'd be nice to get this and that. So what do we do? I guess, I'm sure you see those comments as well.
Of course.
What's a short response that you would have to something like that? Because we also communicate with the public, and so we can have a better response to something like that. Like, because when something comes in front of us, if it checks all the boxes, we can only, you know, push it forward.
Yeah.
So when people say, I want this and that, what's a good response? What is the city doing to get things like that? Like the questions that you had and the responses to those. So essentially, we're trying to just create an environment, codes where it's easy to do all that, and then hoping those guys come in. Anything else you can say on that?
Yeah, absolutely. In candor, from an economic development perspective, we are not the decision makers. We're the influencers, right? We don't have in our municipal or zoning code brand lists that can and cannot go here.
Right.
As long as it's a use type that is allowed or conditionally allowed, that is the extent of the regulatory decision making. The brands that a lot of folks get tired of seeing come here because the market is a match for them. They come here because the demographics look like they do on this first slide. To get the things that people request, they don't usually match the demographics that I showed you on the slide. It usually needs a higher median income. It usually needs more rooftops, a higher population. It usually maybe needs a higher traffic volume. And we can't control those numbers, which means what we need to do is focus on effective storytelling and effective recruitment to get past the numbers. And look, again, candor, it's hard. It's a hard job. And it's similar to sales, but before being in public service, I was in executive sales and marketing with hospitality companies like Marriott and Hilton. And, you know, everybody knows that you only close one deal per 100. And this work that we're doing here, it might be 1 per 2. If I sat here and told you everything that I've lost, everything that I've worked hard for and lost in my 6 years of advocating for Citrus Heights, it would be a much longer list than what I've won. The wins are hard earned, and we all work as hard as possible to get them. So when folks ask that question, you know, the truth of the matter is, if it's allowed, we can't stop them from coming in. But we also do our darndest to get the things that our community wants. And it's exactly what I shared with you. The community desire list, restaurants, breweries, entertainment, these are not necessarily the highest sales tax generating or increase in property tax or even significant economic impact. These are more businesses that increase our community's quality of life. That was a longer answer. You told me
Yeah,
short
yeah,
answer.
no, this is
and-
good. Thank you. I
And
appreciate
then you
it.
got me on a roll.
Thank you. Fellow commissioners, any more questions?
I got some questions.
Shoot.
Sorry, Casey. I'll make it, try to make it short. Just almost more of a comment, the observation that, or the feedback that you're getting from developers in terms of wanting drive-throughs. I'm a little bit surprised from this, I've been ruminating this question, making sure I'm not sort of shooting the city's foot by saying this, but I'm a little bit surprised that, frankly, the state hasn't come down harder on drive-throughs and the emissions of vehicles sitting in line. And I'm a little bit surprised that that issue hasn't daylighted itself, and I'll just throw that out there. I also think, frankly, that, school performance attracts young, successful, vibrant families. I do think this is an important issue that I know has been discussed. It is discussed in the 2x2s with San Juan. But this is something really important in terms of continuing to grow our community and get young families that buy a lot more retail, go out and go to restaurants and do things and whatever else, rather than old people like me. And so it's really important that the city incorporate that in terms of the economic development, looking forward to trying to grow that demographic. I'm curious about, I know you talked about the size of just your staff on this issue. Do you attend conferences at all to try to market Citrus Heights and available property, or what Citrus Heights is all about and that
Yeah.
kind of thing? Do you?
Yep, absolutely. The best, there's a conference for every
Oh, yeah.
segment of business recruitment, right? Ranging from major industrial all the way down to entrepreneurship stuff. The most bang for the buck in terms of trade shows and conferences as it relates to Citrus Heights is through an organization called International Council of Shopping Centers, which is the preeminent retail recruitment trade show. There you'll find exactly the ecosystem that I talked about: developers, property owners, a gazillion brokers. It's at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and at its peak, it's about 35,000 attendees. And then it also has retail brands. So, you have to do your homework in advance to identify the brands that have space, that are desired in your community, get that good storytelling together, maybe find some demographics that could catch folks' attention. So it's a lot of work in advance for trade shows, and it's part of the economic development work plan once this full-time role gets on board to incorporate more of those opportunities.
Just a couple more. I also think it's really important that, I know we have tried to focus on this in terms of improving the look, I'll say, of Citrus Heights. Really important, I'm sure, especially for office considerations, what kind of community they're moving into, what does it look like for their employees?
Sure.
Is it safe? Is there places to eat, and all those kind of things? And that goes through for arts and all kinds of different things. So I think we need to keep pushing that issue. I guess that's about it. I have an idea that I want to talk, with Casey about as far as Sunrise Tomorrow presentation. I was talking to a couple of the commissioners beforehand, saying, I do think we need to continue to emphasize that the Sunrise Tomorrow plan, that everybody whoever's looked at it in any detail, that is just sort of the conceptual plan on which the environmental document was done. It does not represent the hard and fast plan
Yeah.
that necessarily needs to be implemented.
Right.
And I know that's getting down too far in the weeds for most people in the community.
Well, it's
to
actually
understand.
pulling up from the weeds,
But,
to your credit,
But
Commissioner.
it's an important thing for people to understand when they look at it and say, well, you're out of your mind with all that office space. Well, that office space doesn't necessarily need to happen at all, or as much, or whatever else. So, I think that's something that we need to talk about.
Well, you bring up some really important factors as it relates to effective office recruitment. We talked about the classification, about the condition of offices, Class A, B, and C. The product that Citrus Heights has are firmly in those B and C categories. Effective office recruitment right now to get quality corporate Fortune 500 tenants, big job generators or similar, those folks are really looking for amenity-rich environments. So this is where they can pop down the elevator and have 10 places to walk to lunch, 3 available fitness concepts, or even just walking around a development itself that is pleasing and makes you forget that you're getting your steps in, right? Those are what top quality office tenants are looking for, and that's not the style of office that Citrus Heights has right now. Mm-hmm.
I just have one comment. In terms of startups and entrepreneurs, I think that high-speed, low-cost internet would be a huge thing to sort of drive people to the community and start businesses here. I know that we've looked at it before, but I still think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
And I'd like to go ahead and open for public comment. Do we have anyone who wants to comment?
No speaker
No,
cards.
no speakers. We will go ahead and close public comment. And moving on to item number 6. And by the way, Director Huber, thank you very much for that presentation.
Yes, my pleasure. And if I could, one last comment. I just want to express appreciation to our Community Development Department and especially Allison Bermudez for stewarding this item that is the first action step and maybe the most important foundational action step in our economic development work plan. Thank you, Allie.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6. We are going to receive a presentation on zoning code updates, and which is going to be a recommendation forwarded to the City Council.
Thank you, Megan. Always an energetic presentation from Megan. I always learn something and get so enthusiastic. So yes, as Megan mentioned, this is really a follow-up to her presentation, so that's why she went first to kind of set the stage. And one of the actions in the work plan is, as she mentioned, reviewing the zoning code, reducing hurdles for businesses to come in, expanding opportunities for some of those industries and targeted businesses so they can come here with less regulations. So to do that, we did look comprehensively. We have 3 zoning documents that regulate land uses and the permitting process for those uses. The zoning code, which we're all very familiar with, kind of the overarching regulatory document of zoning. And then we have 2 specific plan areas that were reviewed. One, the Boulevard Plan, which covers the portion of Auburn Boulevard from Sylvan Corners north to I-80, and the Stock Ranch Guide for Development, which covers properties along Sylvan all the way wrapped around into the commercial center of Stock Ranch. Each of those documents have a separate land use table that provide available land uses and if they're allowed, if they're permitted, if they need a use permit, or what that process would be. So looking at the land uses of each of those documents, then we took a deep dive into to see what we could update. We took the information that we received from those stakeholder meetings with the developers and the brokers, took those comments into consideration as we made decisions. So first of all, as a reminder about the zoning code, it does establish the framework for the orderly growth and assures compatible development occurs. We want to make sure that if we're going to put a tire shop with air wrenches, that it doesn't go maybe next to a house, right? We have to consider those land uses and their adjacencies, and the zoning code helps set that stage. The zoning code divides all the property in Citrus Heights, so it takes the 14 square miles of Citrus Heights, applies a zoning designation to each area, and specifically identifies what uses are allowed in that area and what standards might be needed for that particular zone. Those have been on the commission before. We usually do update this code about once a year. We'll come before you with comprehensive updates As businesses change, new businesses develop, and as areas change over time, we do have to refresh the code to kind of keep it current and fresh. So we do that typically every year. And we have proposed these amendments tonight really in support of our economic growth and reducing the minimal regulatory burdens. As mentioned, we have a specific plan known as Stock Ranch. This was adopted in 2001, and it really supported the vision. At the time the city incorporated in 1997, the 129 acres of Stock Ranch was the largest vacant property that was in the city. So its future development was really taken into account, worked several years on developing the plan, what it would look like, and really identifying the areas of those 9 acres where there'd be housing, where we put in the office, the SBA building as part of the Stock Ranch plan there at Stock Ranch Road and Sylvan. Placed the park in its current location, Van Maren Park, and then the commercial center that fronts along Auburn Boulevard, all part of that Stock Ranch guide for development. The guide does identify the allowable land uses in each of the districts, so that 129 acres, very different areas, right? Within that 129 acres, you have the residential area, you have the Sylvan Road, and then you have the heavy commercial area along Auburn Boulevard. Each of those areas are in a district, and then each of those districts has their own specific land uses. When the plan was adopted in 2001, the city being still new, we didn't have our own zoning code. We were using county zoning at the time. So the land use table in the Stock Ranch guide used the county land use descriptions. And I'm gonna tell you, those were hoot to refresh, to look over those. Times have changed, and the descriptions of certain land uses have certainly gotten much better. But the guide did always carried over those old, outdated land uses. So part of this project, we did update that table and cross-reference them using our current forms of land use descriptions. In 2006 is when we adopted our own zoning code with our own descriptions and our own titles, and so that's what's been incorporated into the document. And the update does align again with the previous land use table that was adopted, and then current terminology, and again, supports our economic growth. The Boulevard Plan followed later, adopted in 2005, a very still active plan. Part of that plan is even the Complete Streets project that you see going on now. That started through this process, in the early 2000s, and it's still moving forward today, and really seeing some big chunks of work going on, all part of the overall Boulevard Plan. In that plan also was the land use categories that took a look at Auburn Boulevard. As you drive down the boulevard, you see some very distinct shopping areas, you see some heavier commercial areas, and probably the closest thing we might have to heavy commercial industrial use, all kind of segmented along Auburn Boulevard. So again, that stretch of the boulevard was put into districts, and then there was land uses identified through each of those districts then to help kind of change and bring the boulevard into the future. Let's see, so the proposals tonight looked at those land use tables that were done in 2005, and we suggested a few amendments, again, all in support of economic growth. Talk about the key changes. First, let's talk about the zoning code. It took a review of 2 sections, Article 2 and Chapter 8, which is the definitions, which really the definitions, the land use table will have a land use title or description, and it's really the definition that drives the meaning of what that is. So the definitions are quite important, and those same definitions are carried out through each of the documents. So the land use tables in the zoning code, in the Stock Ranch plan, and in the Boulevard plan all use those same definitions. So that was reviewed and updated and modified. And then Table 2 of the zoning code is kind of our master land use table, and it was reviewed and identified, or reviewed and amended. Here's a list of the definitions that were changed. These are some of the key ones that we amended through the definition table. And again, they're important because they play a role throughout each of the documents. In Article 2, the land use table, we did add some categories to the table that were not in existence. Many of these uses existed in the Boulevard Plan, or they may have existed in Stock Ranch or something very similar, but they never did appear in our zoning code. So we have included those, so they appear in all 3 tables. And then also in Article 2, we did make an amendment. This has been something really in the support of economic development that we ran into with some uses we were trying to find locations for. So we would have a certain use that would talk about a permit process if the use was a certain amount of square feet. Sometimes that square footage of that use, it was really not known, is that an average size? Is that a large size? And so when we would have a business come in and say they're 5,010 square feet and our cutoff was 5,000, that 10 square foot kicked them into a different permitting process. And so we added this section that would give us a little bit of flexibility so we could look at those uses. And if they're in that 25% range, or Casey as the director, could approve them to go in. So let's take, for example, the one that's coming to mind is we had a indoor recreation facility. It was like axe throwing, plate breaking, or whatever those recreation facilities are. And they take a lot of space, but they have like big back rooms. They may have a big storage room that's really not active space. And it calculated out to be 540 square feet. At that time, it wouldn't have been allowed in that location because of that square footage. It was over the 5,000, but it was a really good use. We really wanted it. So this provision will allow us to say, okay, we're not going to count the office space. We're not going to count the storage room towards that square footage. And that gives us some flexibility to site those locations appropriately. And then again, a list of some of the new land use categories that we've added to the table. Food and beverage product manufacturing. It was in the Auburn Boulevard Plan, but not in our zoning codes. We've added that. That will help with some of the breweries that come in that maybe brew their own beer. We'll have a more specific category for them. We may have a donut shop that wants to site their commercial office here and have a place for them to create the donuts that get shipped out to their business partners. So things like that. So that will help that economic impact. Cabinet shops is another one we really didn't have listed in the zoning code, so we have added that in. Laboratory and this medical research and development testing was allowed in certain areas along Auburn Boulevard, but didn't appear in our traditional zoning code, so we wanted to add that in. Laundry dry cleaning plant is one we've added in. This would be for a place, such as a cleaner that does commercial cleaning, and it's not a retail stop where you drop your clothes off and pick them up. It's more of an industry where they clean commercials and then their vans deliver them out. So we've added that to the table. We have separated the auto parts sales category. We added, so as auto parts sales, like a regular retail that sells your auto parts, and then some of them do some sort of installations as well. Could be minor, installations, not necessarily repair or maintenance, but they might install the battery or whatever you might get with a car. We had a use that we wanted to come in here that sold high-end parts for vehicles, and these would be like for trucks or something where you add super expensive fancy hitches to or flaps to or something like that. So they do install those high-end goods. And so this would allow that type of use. We added a new category, vehicle support services. This would be for businesses such as where you do test-only smog. So there's no maintenance, there's no repair. You basically, a car pulls in, they hook it up to the computer, and it's gone in less than 10 minutes. There's a lot of businesses that do car registrations. So it's an office function basically, but you go there and you turn in your paperwork to get your car registration. So those didn't really have a clear classification. If you recall, we had a application before you a couple months ago for that test-only center. was really a benign use, and they had to come through the complete use permit process and come before you for review and approval. It seemed a little bit comprehensive and a little bit cumbersome for that type of use, so that's why we created the new category. Each of those new categories were given an area of the zoning code where they are permitted use, so they wouldn't need a use permit or they wouldn't need any specific planning entitlement. So like our general commercial areas, that's really the heaviest commercial centers that we have. So that's where you're going to find your cabinet shops. You know, they would be permitted. You're going to find maybe a dry cleaning plant there. You're going to find product manufacturing in those general commercial zones as a permitted use, unlike before either not allowed or needed a use permit. And then we did amend some of our existing land uses in the zoning code to reduce the planning entitlement process. Commercial recreation, Megan talked a lot about this type of entertainment facility as one of the needed, wanted categories in the community. So in the zoning table, we have that identified as commercial recreation indoor. Major, and those are facilities that are large and are open late into the evening. So let's say a bowling alley, something like that, they're open past 10 p.m. Before, they used to require a use permit, which is a pretty extensive comprehensive review, comes to Planning Commission for review and approval. We have knocked that down to what we call a minor use permit. So it's a little bit quicker process, does not require a public hearing. Goes through the same review process through planning and through our service agencies and working out conditions of approval, but does not require a hearing before the Planning Commission. And that will help fill some of those spaces that we have and bring in that use. We are seeing activity in this area. Fun City was one recently business that is going to be coming along Auburn Boulevard. It's an indoor trampoline center. And so that's kind of a use that's really becoming popular, and we've had other interest from other types of users wanting to come. So this will help that, bring that use in. There's also the same facility, but it's called minor, and these are ones, I talked about, axe throwing or bottle breaking or plate breaking or whatever it is. And those are ones that maybe just are open till 10 p.m., right? They're not late into the evening. They don't have, a lot of hours, or not the big commercial centers. We have, those used to require the minor use permit, but we have reduced that down to permitted. Veterinary clinics is another interested topic. We've had a lot of interest from veterinary services, very lack of service availability in the area for that. So we have reduced the use permit for veterinary services and made it a minor use permit. And moving on to the Stock Ranch Guide, as I mentioned, we did replace the existing land use table that was in the existing guide with the old outdated zoning codes carryover from the county, and we have cross-referenced those into our current land uses. We expanded some allowed uses in each of the districts of the Stock Ranch, and we've streamlined that permitting process for certain uses. Again, focusing on the commercial recreation, we did add this major minor to the Stock Ranch area. It was there before, but it was not broken down into major and minor. So we've added both of those types into the Stock Ranch area and followed the same pattern: major with a minor use permit and major with a minor use permit and minor with permitted. Brew pubs, that is something we have really been focusing on through Megan's shop there and trying to increase our brew pub front activity. She was successful at getting Dark Heart Brewery, so if you haven't been over there to see that one on Auburn Boulevard in Sylvan, that is been a great addition to the community. So we wanted to expand that use and allow it in more locations. It was not allowed previously in the Stock Ranch area, so we've added that into the guide as an allowed use. Kennel and animal boarding, that's another area where people are looking to expand. So we have amended the Stock Ranch guide, and we have added it as an allowed use in the Sylvan district. So not in the commercial center along Auburn Boulevard, but that Sylvan Center along Sylvan Road, that would be an allowed use there. And then school specialized education, we have amended the table to include both minor and major, which again is based upon the number of students. And we have allowed that in all districts of the Stock Ranch. The Boulevard Plan follows the same reasoning. We wanted to be consistent with the zoning code, so we've looked at those uses, would streamline the permitting process for the uses allowed along the boulevard and really support the retail and make it a business-friendly environment. So Auburn Boulevard, again, it's also broken down into different districts. I mentioned the Stock Ranch had the Sylvan area, the Auburn area, and then the residential area. Auburn Boulevard has a little bit more. It has what we call the Lincoln 40, which is the area between Sylvan Road north to about prior to Antelope Road, and there is a Lincoln 40, and that's where you'll see those heavy, uses of, the mower shops and the other automotive, the tire shops along there are in the Lincoln 40 area. So that would be our kind of our more commercial area. Then you get to Grand Oaks, you get all the way up to the corner towards the freeway. You have kind of your shopping center area. So those are each one is a different district. So we looked at those different districts and amended the allowed uses, those based upon the policies, the design concepts of those districts. So contract construction services, those are state licensed contractors who have offices. They might have a storage yard of materials. They might have a yard for their parking of their vehicles. Those were not actually allowed along the Auburn Boulevard plan, so we have amended the plan to allow them in that Lincoln 40 district, which is our commercial area, which really makes the most sense where they would want to locate along that commercial portion of the corridor. Commercial recreation, we follow the same as the zoning code and Stock Ranch, allowed the major and minor with the use permit and the permitted for the minor. School specialized education, follow the same as Stock Ranch, amended it to allow the major, which was the number of students, based on the number of students in all the districts along the boulevard. Veterinary clinics, again, we amended the plan to reduce it from a use permit previously to this would be permitted in all districts along the boulevard area. Added that auto part sales with installation services that we added to the main zoning code. We have added that to the Auburn Boulevard area as well. And that would be a minor use permit in that Lincoln 40 area and a use permit in the Sylvan Village Center. And then added that new category of vehicle support services to allow it in the Lincoln 40 and outside that Rush Park Village Center area as well. So in review, all the proposed amendments are consistent with the general plan. They really are intended to update the regulatory documents based upon the changing trends, so the best practices supporting the council's economic development work plan. We have reviewed it for compliance with CEQA and found that it's category exempt and will not result in any impacts on the physical environment. And as mentioned, this is a recommendation. Since these are what we consider legislative actions, the city council will be the take final action on this, but since they relate to zoning ordinances, we ask that you review them. We can discuss them, respond to any questions, and then your recommendation then will be forwarded to the city council for final action. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that detailed presentation. I'm very glad that to see that we are making things easier, opening things up. Hopefully, we'll see more and more come in. Do we have any questions before we proceed to the motions? And would you like us to take these one by one, or are we taking them together?
Let's take them separately. The first one's ordinance.
Okay. And do we have somebody who'd like to do a motion in a second?
I would like to recommend the city council adopt an ordinance amending sections of Chapter 106 of the City of Citrus Heights Municipal Code, Zoning Code Section, in Exhibit A.
We have a motion by Commissioner Sheeler
I'll second that.
and a second by Commissioner Van Duker. Let's see, roll call on this?
You can do an oral roll call.
Okay, do we have anybody opposed to this? For those for, let's say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion 1 pass.
Okay.
Recommend the City Council adopt a resolution to find the proposed amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, under Section 15061B3 of the guidelines. Repeal and replace Appendix B of the Stock Ranch Guide for Development. Adopt amendments of Figure 3.4 of the Boulevard Plan as shown in Exhibits B and C.
We have a motion by Commissioner Sheeler on item number 2. Anybody second? I can second.
I second.
Okay, go ahead. Perfect. We have Commissioner Al-Rawi second on the second one. Any opposed? And those for?
Aye.
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 Motion 2 pass.
Wonderful. And we're coming up on number 6. Item number 6, we'll now receive any general correspondence, presentations, or reports from the city staff, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple items. I'm sure a lot of you have seen in social media and otherwise, tomorrow night, the City Council is considering amendment by Ethan Conrad Properties to amend the Sunrise Tomorrow specific plan to allow a variety of uses that are not currently allowed by plan, amongst other changes. So I have heard from a couple planning commissioners that are interested in speaking at that item. And I just caution you to state that you are making comments as a citizen, not as a planning commissioner, and also be careful not to use conclusive statements. You might want to say statements like, I like this idea, I don't like this idea, but want to make sure that if it is something that comes to the planning commission in the future, you still are able to vote because you haven't conflicted out. So just a little 2 cents there. The second item, next week on the 29th, you should all have a flyer here. There is a community workshop for the Gateway Activation Project, or GAP, and that is a project in which our goals are to connect the existing Old Auburn Trail to the Arctic Cripple Creek Trail, to the Roseville Trail network through Dry Creek Greenway, all in that northeast corner of the city. So it's the first community meeting to share the ideas about it and solicit feedback, so I certainly welcome all of you to attend that if you're able. And with that, that's all I had. I don't know if Allison had anything.
I did. I wanted to share with you Habitat for Humanity because I don't know if we've updated you since. But as you recall, the city approved the project Habitat for Humanity to build 26 homes on Sayonara. The application period to apply for ownership over those homes opened on April 7th. Within the first week, we had over 1,200 people pre-qualify for 26 homes. And so we have had 2 public meetings where people have come, attended to learn the process about to be a owner of Habitat, what the application period looks like, their obligations, the financial obligations that they have to follow. But it's going very well. The application period goes until May 23rd. So I fully expect that number of interested parties to continue to exceed. We still got a month or so before the application period closes. But if you know someone interested, please don't let that discourage them from not applying due to the number of people. You know, a lot of people fall out along the way, they move, because it is not an overnight process, right? It's about a year build for the first phase of 8, and that's what this application period is for. So we look forward to that project starting, hopefully summer, fall, which will include, as you know, Habitat for Humanity is a community build project. So not only do the future homeowners of that property participate in the construction of the home, but alongside Habitat construction crews are community members. So a lot of different community service groups are out there, just members of the public. The city will have some days that we work out there as well. So if you know if any of your groups are interested, follow us on social media and we'll get those dates out or to let you know how you can volunteer. But it's going very well, so it's very exciting to see the need or the people, responding to that project, and looking forward to having some new homeowners on Sayonara.
Thank you. I also have something to say. Looks like, I'm sad to say, this will likely be my last meeting. I was really looking forward to another 4 years on the Planning Commission, but my family's growing and an opportunity came about, and looks like I'm following in the footsteps of Natalie. We're moving as well, so that kind of just happened recently. So sometime by the end of May, I think we'll move. So sometime in May, but this is highly likely to be my last meeting. So Vice Chair, looks like you'll be taking over. So yeah, so that's all I have. And Secretary, could you read the next item?
Adjournment.
All right. We have reached the end of our meeting, and it is 7:11, and we are adjourned.